I wasn't supposed to hear it. But the walls in this house have a way of carrying secrets, especially the kind that aren't meant for me. It was a quiet Sunday afternoon, the kind where the sun slips lazily through the blinds, dust floating in the air like tired memories. I had just come back from church, my knees aching from too many hallelujahs, when I heard my son-in-law's voice in the kitchen. He thought I couldn't hear. "Look, baby," he said, lowering his tone, "your mama can't live alone much longer. She's forgetting things. Left the stove on again last night." I froze in the hallway, still clutching my purse. My daughter, Tasha, sighed. "I know Marcus, but she's proud. You know how she is." Marcus chuckled, low, sharp. "Pride don't stop accidents, babe. I already made a few calls. There's a home up near Ridgeview. Nice, clean, quiet, nurses 24/7. She'll be safe there." Safe there. Those words sliced through me deeper than any insult ever could. I leaned against the wall, the cool paint pressing into my back. My hands trembled, not from age, but from the memory of every time I'd stood up for them. Every night I'd worked double shifts, every Sunday dinner I cooked, even when my legs burned. And now this man, this outsider, thought he could decide my fate? I listened. Tasha didn't speak for a while. Then she said, quietly, "You already made calls?" Marcus's voice softened. "Yeah, I did. Someone had to. I just want what's best for her. For us." For us. He said it like my life was a burden he had to carry. I swallowed hard, the air thick in my throat. I didn't make a sound as I backed away toward my room. My hands found the edge of my dresser, the same one I'd bought 30 years ago when Tasha was still learning her ABCs. Back then, she'd sit on the floor playing with her dolls while I counted my tips from the diner. I'd promised myself that one day she'd never have to struggle the way I did. And now she was letting a man, her husband, decide when my story should end? That night, I didn't sleep. I just sat by the window, watching the lights from the neighbor's porch flicker in the dark. I thought about all the homes I'd cleaned, all the meals I'd served, all the nights I'd cried behind a locked bathroom door so my daughter wouldn't hear. I'd built everything I had from nothing, and I'd be damned if I let someone take that from me. But I didn't confront them, not yet. See, when life tries to write you out, sometimes the smartest thing you can do is hand them the pen and wait. Because what Marcus didn't know was that I'd already been planning too. 2 weeks earlier, I'd gotten a call from my old boss, Miss Lorraine, the woman who'd once owned the diner I worked at for 20 years. She was retiring, moving down to Georgia, and she'd offered me something I never expected, her house. Said it was paid off, and she wanted it to go to someone who knew the value of hard work. I told her I'd think about it. Now, sitting in the dark, I knew exactly what I was going to do. They wanted to put me in a home? Fine, I'll play along. I'd let them think I was weak, forgetful, helpless. I'd let them whisper and plan and pat me on the hand like some fragile old woman. And when the time was right, when every piece was in place, they'd see just how much power they'd underestimated. Because, baby, I may be 60, but I've got more fight left in me than half the folks still running around pretending they're grown. I pulled out my old journal from the nightstand, the one with the faded leather cover and my late husband's initials carved in the corner. I hadn't written in it since he passed, but that night, I opened to a fresh page, and I started to write, not out of fear, but out of clarity. "They think I can't hear," I wrote, "but I hear everything, and I will remember every word." Outside, the streetlight flickered once, twice, then went dark. It felt like a sign. The next morning, I made breakfast as usual, eggs, grits, bacon. I even hummed while cooking. When Tasha came downstairs, she looked tired, guilty maybe. Marcus followed, all smiles and fake charm. "Mornin', Ma," he said. "Sleep good?" I smiled, sweet as honey. "Like a baby," I lied. "You two want some coffee?" Marcus nodded. "Sure, thank you." I poured it slowly, watching the steam curl up like ghosts of old conversations. When I placed his cup in front of him, I looked him straight in the eye. "You know, Marcus," I said, my voice calm, "sometimes it's better to wait before making big decisions. You never know who's listening." His hand paused midair, just for a second. Then he smiled again, a little tighter this time. "You're right, Ma." Tasha frowned. What's that supposed to mean? I just shrugged, turned back to the stove, and said, "Oh, nothing, baby. Just thinking out loud." But inside, I was already smiling, because that was the first move, the smallest crack in the mask. And from that moment on, I wasn't just their mother. I was their lesson. The trick to pretending is knowing when to be silent, and I had learned silence a long time ago, back when silence kept food on the table and men's tempers from rising. The morning after that uneasy breakfast, I started my little performance. If Marcus and Tasha wanted to believe I was slipping, well, I could give them a show worth believing. It began small. A spoon left in the freezer, the TV remote in the fruit bowl, a half-made grocery list that trailed off mid-sentence. Tasha noticed first. "Mama, you all right? You've been misplacing things lately." I blinked, all soft and sweet. "Oh, baby, guess I'm just tired. You know how it gets at my age." Marcus smirked behind her shoulder. "Yeah, that's what I was saying." I smiled right back. "You're a smart man, Marcus." And he didn't even hear the blade behind the honey in my voice. I wasn't losing my mind. I was setting the stage. Because while they were busy watching me, I was watching them. Every glance, every whisper after dinner, every phone call Marcus took on the porch with his voice lowered. He thought I didn't hear those either, but I did. One night, I caught just enough. The realtor said if we list fast, it'll sell easy. Her name's still on the deed, but once she's moved out, we can handle the paperwork. I froze by the window, hidden by the curtain. So that was it. They weren't just planning to help me. They wanted my house. The same house where my husband and I had built everything, brick by brick, year by year, through sweat, arguments, and prayers. The house where I held my baby girl for the first time. And now my son-in-law wanted to sell it? I closed my eyes and took a deep breath. Anger is a dangerous thing when you let it show too soon. I needed patience, the kind that only a woman who's buried her pride 1,000 times can truly master. The next morning, I forgot to pay a bill, or at least I let them think so. I left the envelope open on the counter, the due date circled in red. That night, Marcus picked it up. "Tasha, you see this? Late again." Tasha sighed. "Mama, you can't keep missing these payments." I put on my best guilty face. Oh, Lord, I must have misplaced the check. Marcus gave me that look again, half pity, half greed. "Maybe we should start handling your mail, Ma, just to help." I nodded slowly, like I was giving up. "That'd be nice, Marcus. You're such a thoughtful man." He smiled, and I swear I could almost see the dollar signs in his eyes. That night, after they went upstairs, I opened the bottom drawer of my dresser. Inside was a manila envelope, my secret. It held copies of every document that mattered, the deed, my insurance, my savings account information, and right on top, a brand new letter from Miss Lorraine's lawyer, confirming the house deed transfer was almost done. By the end of the month, that house would be mine, my name, no one else's. And if Marcus thought he could sell it, he was in for a surprise. The next Sunday, I called up Miss Lorraine. "Honey," I said, "I've been thinking. That house you mentioned in Georgia, I'll take it. I need a little fresh air." She sounded delighted. "Oh, Clara, that makes me so happy. I'll have everything ready by next week." "Don't rush," I said. "Timing's everything." After hanging up, I sat back in my chair and let the smile spread slow and deep. I could feel the pieces shifting, one by one. Marcus thought he was running the show, but he didn't realize I'd been directing this play long before he ever showed up. Now, all I had to do was keep him comfortable in his lies. Make him think he was winning. Make them both believe I was fading. Because when you let people underestimate you, they reveal themselves completely. And Marcus, he was about to reveal everything. Some people think silence means weakness. But silence, it's a language all its own. And in my house, silence was how I learned to survive. That week, the walls began whispering more secrets. Marcus had gotten careless. Confidence makes fools out of men who think they're in control. It started with a call. I was sitting on the porch, pretending to knit, though my hands were still and my ears were sharp. Marcus was in the kitchen, phone pressed to his ear, voice low. Yeah, she's not all there anymore. Forgetting things left and right. The doctor said early signs, maybe dementia. Yeah, it'll make things easier legally. My stomach clenched. So that was the story he was building. Not just the greedy son-in-law. He wanted to make me look unfit. I felt the sun warming my skin, but inside, I was cold. I kept my face calm, eyes soft. I couldn't afford a reaction, not yet. Instead, I made a list in my head. Every lie, every step, every word he thought I didn't hear. Later that night, Tasha came to my room. Mama, Marcus thinks maybe you should see Dr. Reynolds again, just for a checkup, you know? Of course, baby, I said. You two just want the best for me. She smiled, relieved. I smiled too, but mine had teeth. The next morning, I drove myself to the appointment before they could even wake up. Dr. Reynolds was surprised to see me alone. Well, Mrs. Coleman, what brings you here? Just a little rumor I wanted to clear up, I said. I told him everything, not about the house, not yet, but about Marcus's comments, the false worries, the way they were painting me as someone I wasn't. He leaned back, frowning. You seem perfectly sharp to me. I can put that in writing if you'd like. I would, I said, sliding my calmest smile across the desk. And please, send a copy to my lawyer, too. He nodded slowly, maybe realizing more than I said aloud. When I left the clinic, I sat in the car for a moment, watching the world move around me. People rushing to work, kids with backpacks, a man selling flowers on the corner. Life kept going, and I wasn't done living mine. That evening, I let them believe what they wanted. I left my purse in the fridge. I forgot the laundry in the washer. I even repeated a story twice at dinner. Marcus chuckled. See, honey, it's getting worse. I turned to him, eyes wide and innocent. What's getting worse, dear? He almost laughed out loud. I did too, but only inside. Later, while they watched TV, I went out to the garage. My husband's old toolbox still sat on the shelf, dust thick on top. Inside it, I found what I needed, his small tape recorder, the kind that clicked softly when turned on. I smiled. My husband had taught me many things: how to fix a leaky pipe, how to paint a wall, how to hold my ground. But the most useful lesson? Always keep proof, Clara. Folks forget their lies when there's no witness. So I made the recorder my witness. The next morning, I tucked it behind the kitchen clock, right where Marcus always made his phone calls. Then I went about my day like nothing had changed. By the end of the week, I had hours of recordings, voices, plans, laughter, the sound of betrayal dressed up as concern. Every evening, I listened to them in my room with headphones, labeling each tape carefully. Wednesday, financial talk. Friday, doctor lie. Sunday, realtor call. Each word was another nail in the coffin Marcus was building for himself. But I wasn't ready to strike yet. No, I needed to wait for the moment when he'd think victory was already his. That's when truth hurts the most. The morning after the argument, the house felt colder, not in temperature, but in spirit. Clara moved slower than usual, her slippers whispering across the hardwood floor. She poured herself some coffee, the aroma filling the kitchen like a fragile shield against the silence. From the corner of her eye, she saw Marcus's briefcase on the counter. He'd left it open again, careless, overconfident. She hesitated, her heart thudding in her chest. Curiosity wrestled with morality for a long second. Then survival won. Inside the briefcase, among work files and receipts, she found a thick envelope marked Care Facility, Intake Form. Her name was typed neatly at the top. The date was next week. Clara froze. Her fingers trembled, the edges of the paper cutting slightly into her skin. He hadn't just been joking about sending her away. The plan was already in motion. For a moment, she felt the air leave her lungs. But instead of tears, a quiet strength rose inside her. It was the same strength that got her through segregation, through raising 2 children alone after her husband's death, through nights when she didn't eat so her kids could. She folded the form carefully and slipped it back. She couldn't confront him, not yet, not without proof he couldn't deny. That night, she took out an old cassette recorder from the attic, one her late husband used for choir rehearsals. She placed it under the living room couch, where Marcus and her daughter often talked after dinner. 2 nights later, she heard the truth she needed. Marcus's voice, calm, smug. "Once she's out, we'll renovate, sell this place. The money will finally be ours." Her daughter hesitated in the recording. "But she's my mother, Marcus." "She won't even remember. You said it yourself. She's getting forgetful. We'll tell her it's for her safety." Clara pressed pause. The room was silent again, but inside her, a storm raged. She looked at the framed photo of her late husband on the shelf, his steady eyes, the faint smile. "You taught me never to let anyone take my dignity," she whispered, "not even family." The next morning, Clara made breakfast as usual, eggs, toast, and grits. She smiled when Marcus walked in, even offered him coffee. He didn't notice her eyes were no longer sad. They were sharp, focused, ready. Because the storm inside her had found direction. Clara woke up before sunrise. The world outside her window was still wrapped in mist, but her mind was already sharp, clear, awake in ways it hadn't been for years. She moved quietly around the kitchen, setting the kettle on the stove. Her thoughts weren't on breakfast, they were on timing. Every word, every move she'd make from this point had to count. Marcus thought she was old, harmless, slow. That would be his mistake. After breakfast, she walked to the local library, the same one she'd helped rebuild after the old one burned down years ago. The young librarian, Tamika, greeted her warmly. "Mornin', Miss Clara. You here for the book club?" Clara smiled. "Not today, baby. I need to print some documents." On the screen, she pulled up a copy of her house deed. Her name was still the only one listed. Good. Then she printed the recording transcript she had typed herself the night before. She made 3 copies, one for her lawyer, and one for insurance. As the printer hummed, she whispered to herself, "You're not taking my home, Marcus. Not today, not ever." Later that afternoon, Marcus arrived home earlier than usual. He looked surprised to see Clara sitting in the living room, dressed in her best Sunday dress, hair neatly wrapped in a silk scarf. "Evenin', Mom," he said casually, loosening his tie. "Everything all right?" Clara smiled sweetly. "Just fine, son. I was thinkin', we should talk about the house soon, maybe plan for the future." His eyes lit up, just the reaction she expected. "That's a great idea. I've actually been thinking about what's best for you, too." "Oh, I know you have," she said softly, folding her hands on her lap. "You always seem one step ahead." He didn't notice the recorder she had placed behind the flower vase this time. That night, Clara sat by her window again, listening to the soft hum of the street outside. She thought about her children, about how love could turn blind when mixed with greed. She thought about how many women like her, mothers, widows, grandmothers, had lost everything because people assumed they were too old to fight back. Not her. The next morning, she called an old friend, a woman named Denise who worked as a paralegal downtown. Denise owed her a favor from years ago. "Girl," Denise said over the phone, "I can make sure your will and your deed are bulletproof. He won't touch a penny." Clara chuckled, the first genuine laugh she'd had in weeks. Good, because it's time someone learned that this old lady still knows how to play the game. As she hung up the phone, the first light of dawn spilled through the window. Her plan was no longer just a thought. It was in motion, quietly, precisely, just like Marcus's had been. Only this time, she was the one writing the ending. The following week moved slowly, like a calm before a storm. Clara had summoned herself. Every morning, she smiled when Marcus entered the room, pretending to forget small things. Her keys, her reading glasses, even the name of the TV show they'd just watched. He noticed. He always noticed. "Mom, maybe you should see a doctor," he suggested one evening, voice coated in fake concern. "You've been forgetful lately." Clara gave a soft laugh. "Maybe so, baby. You know how time catches up with us." Inside, she wanted to grin. He was taking the bait. The next few days, Marcus became bolder. He started calling realtors when he thought she wasn't home, quietly inquiring about the vacant house on Maple Street. Clara heard every word. She'd installed a tiny recording app on the home phone, the same way she used to record choir rehearsals back in the day. Each call was a confession, and she saved every one. One morning, Clara invited her daughter, Nicole, over for tea. Nicole was Marcus's wife and Clara's only child. She was the kind of woman who worked hard, believed people easily, and always assumed her husband knew best. "Baby," Clara began gently, stirring her tea, "how are things at work?" Nicole sighed. "Busy. Marcus has been handling most of our finances lately. Says it's better if I focus on my art." Clara's spoon froze mid-stir. "Your art? You mean the gallery fund?" "Yes," Nicole said, smiling proudly. "He said he found an investor." Clara set her cup down. "Did you sign anything?" Nicole blinked. "He said he just needed my signature for tax purposes." Clara exhaled slowly, forcing calm into her voice. "Nicole, listen to me carefully. Never sign anything again without me or a lawyer. Promise me." "Mom, what's going on?" Clara smiled, a soft, heavy kind of smile. "Just a feeling, honey. I've lived long enough to know when someone's playing a dangerous game." That night, Clara went into her bedroom, pulled out a shoebox from under the bed, and laid everything out: the recordings, the transcripts, the copies of her deed. She organized each item carefully into a folder labeled insurance. She drove to Denise's office the next morning. The building was old, but Denise, sharp as ever, was waiting with coffee and a knowing grin. "Girl," Denise said, flipping through the papers, "you're about to flip this whole situation upside down. You want me to involve the notary too?" Clara nodded. "Yes, I want everything notarized and sealed, and if anything happens to me, it goes straight to the police and my lawyer." Denise chuckled. "Still 3 steps ahead, huh?" Clara smiled. "Always." That evening, Marcus returned home whistling, carrying groceries, acting the part of the perfect son-in-law. But Clara saw the small envelope in his pocket, the one he quickly tucked away when he thought she wasn't looking. She didn't ask. She didn't need to. She already knew it was the paperwork he planned to make her sign. When he smiled at her and said, "Mom, I've got something for you to look over tomorrow," she smiled right back. "Of course, sweetheart, I'll be ready." But when he left the room, her eyes hardened. "You think I can't hear you," she whispered to herself, "but I hear everything, and soon so will everyone else." She folded her hands, whispering a prayer of patience, not vengeance, because this wasn't just about payback anymore. It was about teaching a lesson, one Marcus would never forget. The next morning, the air in the house felt too still, the kind of quiet that only happens before a storm. Clara stood in front of the mirror, smoothing down the soft lavender sweater her daughter had given her last Christmas. She looked calm, kind, harmless, exactly how she wanted Marcus to see her. At 10:03 a.m., his car pulled into the driveway. She heard the crunch of gravel under his tires, the confident slam of the door, and his cheerful voice calling, "Morning, Mom, brought your favorite, blueberry muffins." Lord, he's even bringing bribes now. She smiled when he entered, the picture of sweetness. "You didn't have to do that, Marcus. You know I can still bake my own." He chuckled, setting the box on the table. "Of course you can. I just thought we could have breakfast while we handle some paperwork." There it was. He couldn't even wait 10 minutes. "Paperwork?" she asked innocently. "Yeah," Marcus said, pulling out a thin envelope from his leather folder. "Just some stuff about the house. You know, property taxes, utilities, things like that. Nothing major." Clara tilted her head, feigning confusion. "You want me to sign it?" "Just routine, Mom. I already filled in the details. Makes it easier for you. All you need to do is sign right there." He slid the paper toward her with a practiced smile. Clara didn't look at it, not yet. Instead, she poured him coffee, the old-fashioned way, in her mother's chipped china cups. "You take sugar, right?" He nodded, watching her too closely. "Yes, please." She stirred the spoon slowly, her reflection trembling in the coffee's dark surface. "Before I sign," she said softly, "why don't we wait for Nicole? She should be part of this, don't you think?" Marcus's smile faltered for half a second. "Oh, she's busy today. I already told her I'd handle it." Clara nodded. "Of course you did." Then she smiled again, the kind of smile that had raised children, buried heartbreak, and survived years of loneliness. "All right then," she said. "Let's make sure everything's in order." She reached for her phone and pressed a small button on the side, her shortcut to speed dial. "Denise," she said sweetly, "could you come in now?" Marcus froze. From the hallway, the door opened, and in walked Denise, notebook in hand, phone camera recording. Behind her came a notary public, holding a briefcase, and a police officer in plain clothes. Marcus blinked, his face draining of color. What is this?" Clara looked him dead in the eye. "This," she said, sliding the unsigned document back toward him, "is called proof." The notary opened the folder, glanced at the paper, and raised a brow. "This is a property transfer document, giving Marcus Williams full ownership of your home, Mrs. Brown." Clara leaned back, folding her arms. "I thought it might be something like that." Marcus's mouth opened, but no sound came out. "See, Marcus," she continued, "I might be 60, but I'm not senile. You wanted to take my home, my savings, everything I built with these hands." She lifted them, the hands worn by work, by years of sacrifice. "But what you didn't know was that every word, every phone call, every whisper, I recorded it." Denise tapped her phone screen, and Marcus's voice filled the room. "She won't know a thing. Once it's in my name, we can sell the place before she even realizes." His head dropped into his hands. The officer stepped forward. "Mr. Williams, I think you and I need to talk outside." Marcus tried to stammer an excuse, but Clara just looked at him, calm as ever. "No need to explain, baby. I already heard enough." As he was let out, Nicole appeared at the doorway, eyes wide with confusion. "Mom, what's going on?" Clara turned to her gently. "You married a man who thought I was too old to notice when someone was lying. I just taught him, and you, that strength doesn't come from youth. It comes from surviving long enough to recognize evil when it smiles at you." Nicole broke down in her arms, whispering, "I didn't know, Mama. I swear I didn't." Clara stood, walking over to her, and took her hand. "I know, baby. You believed him because you love him. But love without wisdom is dangerous. You've got your mother's heart. Now you just need her eyes. Nicole broke down in her arms, whispering, "I'm so sorry." Clara hugged her close. "Don't be. Just learn." Outside, Marcus's car door slammed and the police drove away. The house fell silent again, but this time it wasn't the silence of fear. It was peace, the kind that comes after a storm you refused to let destroy you. The next morning, sunlight poured through the lace curtains of Clara's kitchen, painting gold over everything it touched, the teacup, the calendar, the quiet pride on her face. For the first time in months, she woke up without fear. No whispering voices in the hallway, no pretending to forget things she never forgot. Just peace. The night before had been long. Police statements, questions, paperwork. Marcus had been taken away, and Nicole went home to pack her things. Clara didn't ask her to stay. She needed space. They both did. Now, sitting at her kitchen table, Clara opened a small notebook. On the first page, written in neat blue ink, were 3 words: "Start living again." She stared at them for a moment, then smiled to herself. There were repairs to make, of course. The roof still leaked, the porch light flickered, and the garden had gone wild. But it was her roof, her porch, her garden. And this time, no one was taking it away. She spent the day cleaning, not the angry, punishing kind of cleaning she used to do when she was stressed, but slow, thoughtful, grateful cleaning. Each room held memories. The pencil marks on the kitchen wall from Nicole's height chart, the faded photo of her late husband on the mantel, the soft hum of the old refrigerator she'd bought secondhand 30 years ago. As she worked, she hummed an old gospel song her mama used to sing. "I ain't tired yet, Lord knows I ain't tired yet." Around noon, a knock came at the door. It was Denise, holding 2 paper bags and a grin. "Lunch delivery for the bravest woman I know," she said, walking in without waiting for an answer. Clara laughed. "If that's fried chicken, you might be my favorite person today." "Of course it is," Denise said, unpacking the food. "You think I'd show up empty-handed after last night? Girl, you were legendary." Clara chuckled, shaking her head. "I didn't feel legendary. I felt old and tired." Denise looked her square in the eyes. "Old? Maybe. Tired? Sure. But weak? Never. You outsmarted a man half your age with a smartphone and a smile. Don't downplay that." They ate together, laughter replacing the heavy silence that had haunted the house. Then Denise leaned back, her expression softening. "What's next for you, Clara?" Clara thought for a moment. "I don't know. For so long, I was just surviving, being someone's mother, someone's wife, someone's problem to solve. I forgot what it felt like to just be me." Denise nodded. "Then maybe it's time to find out who you are again." That night, after Denise left, Clara sat on her porch, wrapped in a shawl. The sky above was soft with stars, the kind she used to point out to Nicole when she was little. Her phone buzzed, a text from Nicole. "Mama, I moved out. I'm staying with Aunt Ruth for now. I don't know how to fix this, but I want to try. I love you." Clara's eyes glistened. Her fingers hovered over the screen before she typed back. "I love you too. Healing takes time. We'll get there." She set the phone down and took a deep breath. The air smelled like magnolia and rain, fresh, alive, forgiving. For years, she had let life define her. Widow, mother, burden. Now, she was ready to define herself. As the crickets sang and the night settled softly around her, Clara whispered into the quiet, "I'm still here, and I'm not done yet." She smiled, not the polite smile she wore for others, but a real one, born from strength and survival. Tomorrow, she'd call the community center, maybe volunteer, maybe just sit and drink coffee without worrying who was watching. For the first time in decades, her life was hers again. The days that followed were quiet, but not the kind of quiet that hurt. It was the kind that healed. Clara began her mornings the same way every day. A pot of coffee, gospel music humming from her old radio, and the soft rustle of the newspaper she barely read but liked to hold. There was something comforting about the crinkle of paper between her fingers, a sound that meant life goes on. She started walking again, just small loops around the neighborhood. The first few mornings, she kept her head down, half afraid someone might stop her and whisper about the scandal that had unfolded in her home. But no one did. In fact, people smiled, waved, called her name. "Morning, Miss Clara," the mailman said, tipping his hat. "Mornin', baby," she'd reply, smiling genuinely for the first time in years. On her third walk, she passed by the community center, a big brick building she'd helped fundraise for years ago. The front window had a flyer taped to it. Senior Art and Storytelling Class, Tuesdays at 10 a.m. She stood there for a long time, looking at that paper like it was calling her name. The next Tuesday, she showed up, nervous, clutching her tote bag like it might shield her from embarrassment. But when she walked in, she saw a room full of faces just like hers, people who had lived, lost, laughed, and learned. A kind woman named Marjorie, with silver braids and bright eyes, greeted her. "First time?" "Yes, ma'am," Clara replied softly. "Well, baby, you're in good company. We've all got stories to tell." That was the beginning of something new. Each week, Clara painted, wrote, and, for the first time, told her story out loud. Not the edited, polite version, but the truth. The betrayal, the strength, the quiet rage, the forgiveness. When she spoke, the room went silent, and when she finished, people clapped, some with tears in their eyes. After class one day, Marjorie touched her arm. "You ever think about publishing that story, honey?" Clara laughed. "Who'd want to read about an old woman like me?" "Everyone," Marjorie said without missing a beat, "because everyone's been where you've been, just in their own way." That night, Clara sat by her window with her old laptop, the screen glowing in the dark. She began typing, slowly, carefully, her story. Each word felt like pulling out a thorn she'd carried too long. Halfway through, she paused and whispered to herself, "You hear that, Marcus? I'm still writing." She smiled at the absurdity of it, talking to the ghost of a man who'd tried to erase her, but it felt good. It felt powerful. Weeks turned into months. Clara finished her story, printed it, and handed it to Marjorie, who passed it to someone she knew in local publishing. By spring, Clara's story had a title, I Heard Everything. It wasn't just a memoir, it was a declaration. When Nicole came by to visit one Sunday afternoon, she found her mother sitting on the porch swing, reading a proof copy of her book. "Is that your name on the cover?" Nicole asked, eyes wide. Clara smiled. "Sure is." Nicole's eyes filled. "Mama, I'm so sorry. I should have." "No, baby." Clara reached out, took her hand. "Just be better. For yourself." They sat there for a while, holding hands in the warm air, the past between them slowly dissolving like sugar in tea. As the sun dipped low, Clara looked out over the yard, her yard, and thought about all she'd lost and everything she'd gained in return. Peace wasn't something you found, it was something you built. And for the first time in a long, long while, she was building again. The morning of the book launch felt unreal. The small bookstore on the corner of Jefferson and Main had never seen so many people before. Teachers, neighbors, church friends, even some of Nicole's coworkers. The sign above the door read in bold gold letters, "Book signing, I Heard Everything" by Clara May Johnson. Clara stood near the entrance, wearing her favorite blue dress, the one her late husband had once said made her look like summer sky. She wasn't nervous, not anymore. The woman who used to shrink in silence was gone. In her place stood someone who had learned that silence wasn't weakness, it was the pause before strength. Nicole helped her arrange the table. "Mama, I'm proud of you," she said softly. "Thank you, baby. You know, I used to dream about days like this, but I thought they were for other people. Turns out they were just waiting for me to show up." The crowd grew. People lined up with copies of her book clutched in their hands. Some hugged her, others cried. A young woman said, "Your story made me call my mother for the first time in years." An older man added, "You gave me courage to leave a bad situation. Thank you, Miss Clara." Every thank you felt like a piece of her heart being mended back together. When the bookstore owner asked her to say a few words, Clara took the microphone and looked out at the sea of faces. For a moment, her throat tightened. Then she began, her voice steady, rich, and full. "When I was younger, I thought strength meant never breaking. I thought if I just stayed quiet, kept the peace, everything would be fine. But silence can be a cage. And when I overheard my son-in-law planning my future without me, I realized something important. They thought I couldn't hear. But honey," she smiled, eyes glistening, "I heard everything. And I decided it was time they heard me." The crowd erupted in applause. Afterward, as the evening settled in, Clara walked out of the store and stood beneath the streetlight. The air smelled like rain and magnolia. Nicole joined her, holding 2 cups of coffee. "You did it, Mama," she said, handing one over. "No, we did," Clara corrected gently. They stood there in the quiet, the good kind of quiet, the kind that hummed with peace. From across the street, Clara noticed an elderly man selling roses from a cart. She walked over, bought a single white one, and held it up to the dark sky. "To the woman I was," she whispered, "and the woman I became." As she turned back toward the car, she heard laughter, her own, free and unguarded. For 60 years, Clara Mae Johnson had lived by other people's plans. But that night, walking down Jefferson Street with her daughter's hand in hers and a rose in her pocket, she finally felt it. Freedom didn't sound like shouting. It sounded like finally being heard.